Hi everyone, my name is Carly Bell and I love to do machine embroidery tutorials. And today we will be continuing on our sew along journey for Kimberbell's Main Street Celebrations bench pillow. And we're getting very close to the end, so I'm very excited. If this is your first time joining me, you need to check out the page that I have linked for you. It's the first link you should see in the description box below. That is going to bring you to my website, carlybell.com, and give you all of the information on this sew along. It's going to tell you all the details of what we're using, links to all the supplies that I have purchased, and also show you all of the previous videos that we have done with the sew along so you could see them in order. With the first video, kind of giving you an introduction to Kimberbell and their types of projects that tend to take longer to accomplish. And that's why we're splitting it up into individual videos for this particular project for each block of the pillow, and then a few extras for the borders, embellishments, and sewing it together and everything. So you can get all of that info on my website, including the free cheat sheet download that I've made for y'all. It's kind of like an organizational chart telling you which block, background quilting, batting size, final cut size, embellishments, all that thing. And then they have a whole chart just on batting on the back. So go grab that. That's for free on my website. So today we are going to be working on block number 6, which is the farmhouse. So in our last tutorial that we did all of the in the hoop embellishments that needed to be created for this project. And one of those embellishments we will be using today, and that's those little teeny tiny pennant flag pieces. I put them in my envelope here. Um, but we're going to be using those. So make sure you grab them along with whatever you have prepped for this farmhouse block, including your background fabric, your batting, and then all your pieces for applique. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to be doing this in the 6x10 hoop, and I'm going to be using the method that I used in the second block, which was the fire truck or fire station, um, where typically this design with the background quilting, the design fits in a 6x10 hoop, but the background quilting is slightly wider than my embroidery field. So I'm going to be using the background quilting design that I tweaked a little bit in Brilliance, and you can refer back to the fire station video, and I think, what was the other one? The pickup truck video, block video. That's the one where I saved that background quilting design so that I could just reopen it and use it for the rest of the block. So I think this is the last block I will need to use. That is the pickup. Let's see, we did the pennant, we did the embellishment, we're on the farmhouse. So this is the last time I'm going to need to use that altered background quilting design. And then when we go to the last block, windmill, it goes back to that smaller size, 4x8, just like welcome. And so then we don't need to tweak anything. It's all going to fit in this 6x10 hoop, no problem. So this is the last time I'll be using that altered background quilting design. So let's hop into Embroiance and pull it up so that we can get our designs combined and everything. So let me change you over to my computer screen. 1 second, please. I can't get this. All right, it's gonna look a little crazy. There we go. All right, so this was from my embellishment we did in our last tutorial. So let me go to my Kimberbell folder and Main Street Celebration. And this is where I saved that altered 6x8 background quilting design for my 6x10 hoop. And that's a working file. And I think last time I did this, when I double clicked it, it merged with what I had open. Let's see if it's going to do that. Nope, it opened it up in a new tab. That's what it's supposed to do. One time I was doing it though, and it was merging, and it was weird because usually it doesn't do that. All right, so I double clicked that, and my computer knows to open all my BE files, PES files, any embroidery thing related. It knows to open it with Embroidery Essentials. So there it is. And now we want to merge the embroidery design for the farmhouse with that. So there it is right there. So 6 by 10 farmhouse. So I'm just going to drag and drop, and that is going to perfectly center it, and it's going to stitch right where it is supposed to. And as with the other blocks that we have done with this method, I am going to delete the first 2 steps of the farmhouse because those are placement and basting stitches that I won't need because I've already got my batting and background fabric basted into place with the background quilting. So then we can just kind of go from there. So we'll see the first step of the embroidery design looks like a placement stitch and a tack down stitch for the like building part of the farmhouse. And then for the roof of the farmhouse and the other roof and the door. So you can see we got a few pieces of applique, the windows, and then it starts stitching some of the finishing stitches and such. And then we're going to have a spot where we are going to add our little pennant um, pieces that we made. Let's see, that's probably later on right there. So that's like a placement stitch. And then we'll have a tack down, and then we'll flip over our pieces, and then I'll tack it down again. So that's a fun new technique for this particular block. Also, we're going to be doing some fringe embroidery on this corn stalk. So that corn stalk, I think I'm saying it right. Anyway, that's going to be a new fun technique. If you haven't done fringe embroidery before, we will be playing with that. And then we have the fireworks and our little eyelet. So I love opening a design in Embroiance. It allows me to see all the steps ahead of time, and I can click and look and zoom in and all those fun things. So now that I have this the way that I want it, I am going to save it as a stitch file to my USB stick that plugged in but is not recognizing it. Let me unplug it and plug it in. And now we see no name. Let me rename. Oh, can I rename this? Yes. Let's go in embroidery design USB. There. Can't be used. Too many things. Okay, let's try embroidery USB. Nope, it just doesn't like anything. I want to name it. What about embroidery? Am I spelling it right? Yay! Okay. Maybe it doesn't want spaces in between. All right, so now my USB stick is named embroidery. So I am going to double click this, and now I see everything that's on that. And I am going to rename this design to be MSC for Main Street Celebration Farmhouse. Oh wait, and I think I put the block number in there too. So this is 6. All right, that's how I've been saving them on here. Yeah, so I put the block number and then the name of the block. So let's save that. And then we can eject my USB safely. Yep, now it's gone. And now we can go to the machine and plug it in. So give me just a second here. And I got my hoop. I just turned my machine on, but I haven't calibrated yet. And I go really. Yeah, my USB stick. That in. The last time, on the tutorial we did last, I had changed it. So before I shut down my machine, I put my embroidery foot back on. I put my embroidery bobbin back in. So now it's really ready to go. And I'm going to hit embroidery and my USB stick. And can scroll to NSC 6 Farmhouse. Okay, set. So we're ready to go. And embroider. All right, now the first step is the placement stitch for adding. I have white thread glue, but I'll just go with that. Roller press your foot in. Okay, get my stuff. So here are the pieces I need, but I need to add a little bit of glue. Here we go. So if you're new, you noticed I didn't use normal stabilizer. I got lightweight cotton muslin on the back here. This is what I've been using for all my Kimberbell projects. It saves a lot of money on stabilizer and it works great. And I pre-cut my batting to be the size so I can skip some steps of not having to tack it down and applique it and trim it after, And I just use a normal Elmer's glue stick to help keep that in place. And then my background fabric I have cut according to the fabric cut guideline that came with the instructions. And I just kind of eye it to be in the middle of this piece of batting. And next we are, instead I skip that placement stitch because I don't need it to tell me where to put it. I know it's right on top of the batting. And now we're going to go baste it into place and then do our background quilting. Oops, wrong button. Okay. But you saw my cute little quilt. That was the one I made. So now I want to change to that water soluble red. And we played with it last time, not the last video, but I think the video before that, where instead of using the water, I just tried to cut it out. And I think I determined I like the water better. Not so good, but I like it better. So water soluble thread, that is going to do our basting. We thread the needle. Okay, and that is done. And now I'll put the white thread back on. And we're done with background quilting, and now we can start all those pieces out. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and leave my white thread on there. The first step is the body house bottom part of the farmhouse, and the way I pick my fabrics to kind of coordinate with fabric that if you would want a fabric kit, because I have white fabric and then I have a little bit more of a creamy fabric that's going to be like part of the roof, and then there's tan color is like the floor of the roof or whatever. So these are the fabric main pieces I'm using for farmhouse. So that's the placement stitch. Peel off the heat and bond light. Put that in place and tack it down. Now for all three of these pieces of applique, for the next piece here, the one after that, and then they're all going to be covered up by a satin stitch. Unlike the last few appliques we've done and the wing block, pickup truck block, those are all done with like faux leather. So the tack down stitch is also like the finishing bean stitch. This one I'm going to trim as close as I can to that tack down stitch line so that when it gets covered with the satin stitch, there won't be any fabric stitch. So with each one of these appliques, we're going to remove it from the machine and go to my table and trim them. Okay, and with all of my cotton applique fabric that I have for this project, I did put that heat and bond light on the back. So after I trim it, I just activate that heat and bond light with my little mini iron here. Okay, so now we'll just continue with doing all bits of applique. Again, it does not matter what thread color you use for these steps because it's all going to be covered up and not seen. So the next bit is the top portion of that. Okay, now that top is done, we will do the placement stitch for like gable and tack it down, trim it, and iron it. Bit of applique is the door, and I'm using this cute teal kind of fabric, but we'll do the same process: placement, tack down, trim, and iron. And I guess this would be the last piece of regular applique, which is the windows, which I'm using the same fabric I used for the windows as the other one, but there's still going to be that fun piece of the puzzle where we're going to add the vinyl on top of the windows. But I don't know if that's right after this or not. But the fabric of the windows is that same process: placement, tack down, trim, iron. Okay, so yeah, we're not doing the vinyl on the windows yet. But the next step is a white satin stitch border on the outside of the house. Okay, the next step is a satin stitch outline around the door, and we're going to be doing that in gray thread. Okay, the next step is just, I think, the door handle, which will be a quick little step, and we're going to do that in black thread. Little thread tails that we have right here. And the next step is kind of a detail and maybe like siding. And I did that on the general store too. I think I'm going to do it in gray thread, just like I did on the general store. The next step is just a satin stitch on the bottom of the house, which kind of, I guess, serves as the foundation. And I will also do that in gray. No, I'm wrong. It's not the foundation. It's underneath the little gable here. There'll be another step of gray thread. Okay, next is going to be the porch pillars, which I'm going to do in like a tan khaki color. Pillars are done, and next is going to be a satin outline around the roof, and I'm going to keep that same tan khaki color thread. The next step is going to be a satin stitch outline at the top of the roof, and I will be doing that in white thread. My bobbin thread is running. My bobbin thread is running out, so I'm going to go ahead and hit the cut button and remove my hoop from the machine. I can get to the bobbin case, and I can send this out and get the new pre-wound bobbin and move it. Make sure it's going counterclockwise, fold it 12 inches or so of thread out to make sure the bottom tension is set. And luckily we hadn't really started the satin stitch yet. It was still doing like the underlay. So I am just going to press the needle plus minus button on my screen over here and back up about 20 stitches. And that will lock in where I cut it and start it here. And we can just get back to stitching. All right, the next satin detail that we will be stitching out is the outline for the windows, which I will be using kind of, you can use whatever color you want. Okay, we are done with that outline for the windows. Now I think it is time to, let's see, next is going to be a white satin stitch, and that's going to be that outline for the door. So the door window will have different outlines. So they're in yellow, the door will be in white. And after that, I think it's time to attach the vinyl to the windows. All right, that satin stitch outline is done. And now I think we don't need a placement stitch because we know where our windows are. So we're going to take our vinyl that came with our embellishment kit, and that should cover all 3 windows very easily. And it's going to do like a bean stitch on around the window outline. And I'm going to do this again. All right, we're done with stitching down the vinyl, and you can see the little bean stitches here. And we're going to trim this just like an applique right outside that down bean stitch. Okay, now we are all done with that trim, and we have our cute little vinyl detail on all 3 windows. Now put it back on, and I'm going to take my white thread off and put gray thread on, and we're going to stitch a detail of the porch swing, almost like the chains that hold the porch swing, and do that in gray thread. All right, now that those chains are done, we are going to switch back to that tan khaki color and stitch the actual porch swing. Okay, now that the porch swing is done, the next is that column down where the foundation of the house is, and I will be going back to my gray thread for that. All right, we are done with that foundation. It's a big, pretty nice wide satin stitch there. Now we are getting to the part where we are going to add our little pennant that we made in our last tutorial. And I am going to switch now to black thread because that's what I'm going to ultimately end up using. But this is going to be a 3-step process. First, we're going to have a placement stitch showing us where to put our pennants. And these are loose little pieces of the leather, so we're going to need some embroidery tape to hold them into place. So we're going to stitch that placement line, get all little 5 pieces, and oh no, it's not one big line. It's going to be 5 little, almost like dashes, and that's going to show you right where to place each one. And when we place them, we're going to end up placing them face down, where the bottom of the pennant lines up with these placement stitches that are getting put down right now. So our 5 little placement marks are done. Our little pennants, right side down, bottom of it lined up with this placement mark and covering it. I think it's going to stitch right over that same spot again, and that's what's going to tack it down from the underneath. And once it's nice and tacked down, we're going to flip it over right side up, and then it will really tack it down. So it's kind of a flip and fold method. So just make sure that it is covering those little placement stitches. I do it at the angle that that stitches as well. All right, so those are all taped in place. Now I think it's going to do that same stitch, and I'm just keeping my black thread on. So it's actually higher than that first stitch, I think. And I can't tell with this one. Yeah, it's higher than that original placement stitch. So you could have it right on top of there, because it's going to end up shifting up above that. Now that that is done, we can remove the tape. Let's save it, because we'll just reuse it here. Now you see all those little pieces are tacked down, and we are going to flip them over. And we might actually need individual pieces of tape for this. Just tape each one down. So flip it, finger press it, and tape it down. And it's okay if the tape ends up being where the stitch line is, because this tape is tack adhesive, so it's meant to be okay to your needle go through. I mean, I'm gonna try and keep it on the left side. It rips something like the other way. So I usually don't have any trouble with it. Okay, so I have all of them flipped over and taped into place. Oh no, I'm sorry, the camera was where you couldn't really see that good. All right, let me show you up close. So I flipped them over and taped each one down, and now it's going to do a stitch across all of them. Everything should be in place. I'm worried about the presser foot going over these bits. It might actually be better to tape all of it, because I can see right here, as soon as my presser foot starts to move this way, it's going to get caught up in there. So even though it might be a little bit of a pain in the butt to remove this tape after, I'm going to go ahead and do that just so that the presser foot can glide over this and get hung up on anything. And I think I might even keep my stiletto handy for this part. Another option would be to raise the presser foot a smidge, but I'll take my fingers and see how this goes. So we should be able to just pull this up like tearaway. Yay! That's super cute. So it's a very cute detail for the farmhouse. It's a little pennant. The only one that don't look quite right is this one, but I think that's because it got moved when I taped it initially. But not too shabby. I like it. Hi everyone. It is a new day here. I actually had to stop stitching out my project after we finished the cute little pennant banner. And I figured this would be a good opportunity to show you, if you are in a situation like me where you have to stop stitching in the middle of a project, we can turn our machine off and everything with this project. I'm going to explain the differences between things, but like yesterday, I was doing this project with y'all and my timer went off. It was time for me to go get my kids from camp. We had to go run errands. I never did get to come back in my craft room yesterday to finish this block. So I turned everything off in here and just I'm turning everything back on now this morning. So I figured I would show you that process in case that ever happens to you. So let's jump over to my machine. Let me fix my camera. Okay, so this is where we left off. Turned my machine off. Now, when I turn my machine back on, it is going to tell me it can't have a hoop in it. It can't have a hoop in it when it recalibrates and all that good stuff. So I'm going to take the hoop off and I'm going to turn my machine off. Now, one thing, so let me tell you the main reason why we can do this. Because we uploaded our design and did not move it. There was at no point where I adjusted where the design was or moved my needle around or anything, right? All we did was put it right on, correct? So that means that we can just turn the machine off and turn it back on and reload the design. Another thing with some of the newer machines, and if you see mine is saying it right now, it says, okay to recall and resume previous memory. If your machine has this feature, then I think even if we did like adjust where the design was and moved it, it will recall that exact place. So we can pick up right where we left off. But your other option would be to go back to your USB, pull up your design, and use the needle plus minus button to navigate to the step where we left off. So I hope that makes sense for everybody, and that knowing that you can stop in the middle of a project and come back to it another day if you need to, as long as you leave everything in the hoop and either you have this feature on your machine where it will pull right back up where we left off, or let's see. Yeah, and it's picking right back up on the step I was on, which was the little leaves for the corn stalk. So if I didn't have this previous to recall memory option, I would navigate to my USB, pull up this design, then use my needle plus minus button and run through the steps until I got to the step that I left off on. So I just wanted to go over that with you. Hope that makes sense. But now we can get to stitching the cute little corn stalk on the side of the house. And what's fun about this design that's about to happen is it has some fringe embroidery in it. And also to warn you ahead of time, there is one step, which is the step with the actual fringe, where you don't have to do this, but it is super helpful. We're going to change our bobbin thread to something that we can see on the back so that we know exactly what bobbin thread is related to the part that's going to fringe on the front. This will make sense in a little while. But while you're stitching out this next step, go and find maybe the same red bobbin that we used yesterday for that freestanding lace part that we did. But I just wanted to give you a heads up. We do need a colored bobbin for underneath. Doesn't matter what color it is, as long as it stands out against the white so that you could see the difference in those particular steps. But for now, we're going to stitch the little leaves on the corn stalk, and I'm doing this in a green colored thread. So I have that all ready and loaded. So I'm going to lower my presser foot. It might go over this, so let me raise my presser foot. Here's another thing. So we got this piece here. For me, I feel like my presser foot's going to come here and pull and might mess something up. So back to that needle plus minus button. I'm just going to go ahead one stitch. Now my machine has moved to where the next stitch is going to be. So it didn't drag the presser foot over my house and accidentally get caught up on my little pennants. So I wanted to show you that trick because I use that a lot when it comes to certain projects that I want to make sure my needle is actually right where it's supposed to be before I start stitching. Okay, so the little green leaves are done. This tail I have right here. All right, the next step is going to be what is going to be the yellow cob part of the corn. And I'm using a little bit darker yellow than I did on the windows. The windows I did the real light buttery yellow. This is more of a golden one. And so I will load my thread. and we will stitch out the little yellow bits of the corn. All right, now the corn is done. The next part is white, and that's like, I don't even know the terminology for corn, maybe the husk of the stringy white bits. That is going to be the fringe part. But to help us, the way that fringe works is that we end up, it's stitched, it's digitized in a certain way. Number one, you can't just do this with any stitch. It has to be digitized in a certain way so that when you do this next step, it works the way you want it to. But the way the step works is that you actually go and trim the stitches and cut the bobbin thread. So, like, I don't know how well we can see this. I guess the easiest bit to show you would be, okay, there's the back of the satin column for the porch pillar that's done in tan. We could see tan on either side, and we see our bobbin thread in the middle. If this was digitized to be fringe, we would literally stick our scissors right in the satin column and cut all those bobbin threads. Now we want to be able to distinguish the bobbin thread of this white stringy bit on the front versus the bobbin thread of the leaves or the yellow part of the corn. And the easiest way to do that is to change the bobbin thread color. So it will really stand, the red will really stand out. So I'm going to take my normal white bobbin thread out and put my red in, and then put my hoop back on and load my white thread, because it would be white on the back with this particular fringe. So it'd be really hard to tell where to cut. So now it will be very distinct red on the back, so we know where to cut when we're ready to do that part, which will be after we're done with this block and maybe even trimming it and everything. Okay, so I have a red bobbin, I have a white top thread, lower my presser foot, and now it's going to stitch that stringy white stuff that goes around the corn. You'll notice it's a very wide satin stitch. Usually fringe is going to be very wide. So it will be easy to cut. It won't be a little skinny satin column like we were talking about with these pillars. It's very wide. Oh, they give me the right terminology in the instructions. Corn silk, and it's fringe. So the first green we did was the corn husk. Then the yellow is the corn cob fill. Now we're doing the corn silk. Then we'll do the corn stalk in front of corn husk. And then we stitch husk and leaf detail. So I love that the instructions is giving me the right terms to use for these pieces of corn. Okay, so that's done. So not only will we be knowledgeable about fringe embroidery, but we will also be knowledgeable about the specific names of the pieces of corn. Okay. All right. So now I am loading back the same green thread, the darker green thread that I did for the first bit of the husk. And now we'll stitch another detail on top. Now let me make sure I don't have to trim anything before I do this step. It's not telling me to trim. It's just saying, oh, I need to change my bobbin back. Okay. So done with the white silk for the corn. And now we want to take the red bobbin out and put our white bobbin in. But I don't see anything in the instructions about us having to trim that red bobbin thread before we move on. No, it just says stitch the corn silk fringe. And then after that's done, change your bobbin back to white. And then we have our two shades of green, our darker shade and our lighter shade. And then we'll move on to the fireworks. And then it has instructions for trimming the corn silk, making the corn silk fringe on the back. Um, and it doesn't say that we have to do this before we stitch everything else. So that's what I wanted to make sure. So I don't know if these next two green stitches that we're doing will get in the way of trimming that effectively, but it doesn't seem like it does. Okay, so I got my dark green thread on, back to my white bobbin. Now let's finish stitching this. All right, we are now done with that dark green detail, and we will now switch the last bit of the corn, and that is a lighter green detail. Is the husk and leaf. All right, so the corn is all done, and now the last few steps are going to be our three different metallic threads for the fireworks and then our blue for the eyelets. So I will just change thread colors. Our first is red, then white or silver for me, then gold, and then blue. So I'll just let the machine stitch and change those thread colors as needed, and y'all can watch it all and fast forward. Okay, we are all done stitching. Let's back this up a little bit so you can see. So here we go. All done stitching now. All we have to do is remove the basting stitch, iron the edges, and trim, and then we'll go over how to fix this corn silk fringe embroidery. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and take this out the hoop. And next, I will wet all my edges here with the basting stitch and dissolve this water soluble thread that I have on there. Okay. Yeah, I definitely think the water soluble thread is a lot easier than picking out your basting stitch. And now the bobbin thread comes right out. And we are ready to press the edges. And of course, we're going to be mindful of the metallic thread in our faux leather and vinyl that we have going on the house right there. So basically just going to do that outline right where it's wet already, just to have nice flat edges before we trim. Okay, all of that looks good. Let me actually trim my stabilizer off the back up here. So now I can save this piece for our next and final hooping. Yay, for the blocks. We still got a hoop for um the borders. But I'm just trimming this so that when I turn my cutting mat, I'm not hitting things on accident. Okay, so this is my rotating cutting mat, and where I left my orange pop ruler in my basket this time instead of keep putting it back in my bag. But we are going to trim this using, what is a 6.5 by 8.5. And the one thing you're going to look out for is you want the bottom of the house to be a 1/4 inch from the inside bottom of the ruler. That's kind of your guide that you are cutting this, right? So that would be right there for me. And I am using my batting placement stitch box as kind of a guide to see that I'm also a 1/4 inch away, a little bit more than a 1/4 inch away from those sides so that I know I got it centered. And then we're a little bit higher on the top because I think the bottom is where we want to make sure that the 1/4 inch is from the bottom so that everything looks like when we sew this together. All right, and once everything I think looks good, move my cup, and now I'll get my rotary blade and we'll press and trim this. I think I got it all. Let's see how I did on my corners. Yay, I did good. All right, so we are now done with the farmhouse block with the exception of the fringe. So now we'll turn it over to the back and you can very clearly see the red bobbin thread. And I'm gonna hold this close to the camera so y'all can see. But basically, I am going to try to get my needle under that red bobbin thread. This is going to be tricky. Other times I've done fringe embroidery, it was just like a very big satin column. It was very, very, there was no other embroidery on top of it or around it. So this is definitely a bit trickier than what I've done in the past. See if I could do this. And I got a few of them there. See a couple more. I'm just trying to dig and get those red threads under my scissors. Okay, now let's turn around to the front and use some tweezers. There we go. And you should be able to pull out what is loops. And the bits that are not coming out are the bits that I still need to trim. And it may be because it's stuck under some other stitching. I see a little red thread right there. I don't know if I can pull that out. Maybe I'll just trim it. There it is. Okay, so I got that out. But that's basically what we're doing. I see another red right here. But it seems like these don't want to come out. I don't know where the bobbin is on those or if those are even supposed to come out. I don't know. But I think we just have to play around with this. This is definitely more tricky than some other fringe embroidery I have done in the past. Now we have to get very certain spot. I don't even see any red bobbin threads on the back of where those are. So I'm gonna just leave that alone and let those little pieces poke out. Now let's try the next one. Ow, poke myself. Okay, I think I've gotten most of that. Let's see how that works on the front now. Some of it's coming up. Okay, so I'm definitely not able to get all of it. And then this looks like it's not looped anymore. It's just an end piece. So just trim it so it matches the rest. Okay, so yeah, I can't get them all, but I'm happy with some of them. And this one looks more distinct. I don't know if I'll be able to trim it though, because it's very tight. So I don't know. I kind of feel like maybe we should have trimmed them right after we stitched them. So then nothing, I mean, what we did 2 stitches after that. So I don't think too much was in the way, but they're just hard to get to here. But we got some. And if this drives you absolutely crazy, it looks perfectly fine without fringing it. Or the thought of this drives you crazy, you don't have to do it. It'll look good without it too. But it is a cute little detail. All right, let's see if this one is any easier. Okay, I am done with this. All right, definitely not a good first fringe embroidery design if you've never done one before. It's a bit tedious. I've done some that were much easier and more satisfying. But it is a very cute detail. I would say, though, if you um, are doing it after watching my tutorial, I would go ahead and trim those pieces right after you stitch them. I think that might make it a little bit easier because I'm trying to remember we did go and stitch some more things after that did go maybe directly on top of it and made trimming it a little bit more difficult. But yeah, I think if I was doing this again, I would trim the red bobbin thread right after I stitched it before moving on to those greens. So, okay, now we are truly done with the farmhouse block. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. And remember, all the info for this sew along can be found on my website, carlybell.com. And you can, if you have any questions about anything, you can post them in the comments below this video. You can also email me at hello@carlybell.com and let me know, what you think, what your questions are. And I love seeing pictures of everything. So after you sew your blocks, you can post them in our general Facebook group that we have for beginner machine embroidery. Um, it's a great community of crafters that are super helpful and kind. So, especially like when you make something you're super proud of, but no one in your family appreciates your craftiness, come and post it in the Facebook group because we're going to love it and we're going to tell you how awesome you are. But that is it for today. Only one more block left after this, and that is the windmill block. So we have that tutorial. Then we're going to do a video on the borders and how to piece the patchwork part and then quilt them. And then we'll have one of sewing everything up and adding the embellishments on. So hopefully about 3 more tutorials I'm hoping to get done next week so we can have this project wrapped up before 4th of July. So thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye, everyone.